So this is the brand new Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, and even though it looks like what is arguably last year's phone of the year, the S23 Ultra, there are some major upgrades, and interestingly, a couple downgrades as well, but there's really four main things I think you need to know about this phone. And so in this video, I'm going to talk about my hands-on time with this phone and the four big differences that could potentially make this the best phone of 2024. Starting off with the first one, this is the flat display. Unlike last year and all previous models really that had kind of a curved display on them, we now have flat display in here, which has some pretty big advantages, specifically for me when you're using the S Pen. So if I'm writing on this phone, which let's be honest, if you're getting the Galaxy anything Ultra, you're probably doing it because you really want to be, like, you're a power user, you're going to be using the pen, and sometimes falling off the edge I think is a bit of a drawback. That's not something that I've ever really enjoyed, although it does give you a nice viewing experience with the waterfall display in the past. Regardless, flat display has some pros and cons. I think it's personally a big advantage, and we're still getting a lot of the same specs on the display, still among the best on the market. 120 Hz, Quad HD+, dynamic AMOLED 2X display. It's still 6.8 inches, and it's a very boxy design once again. The phone overall is nearly identical in size and weight to last year, so like it's still a really great viewing experience. You just don't have that little waterfall edge. Makes the bezels more visible, unfortunately, but like the S Pen is going to work a little bit better. Additionally, on the back, since the camera bumps are really not that pronounced, writing with the S Pen, you don't have nearly as much wobble as previous generations. I think it's a really a pleasant experience when you're using this. But kind of before we get into number two, let's kind of touch on the design a little bit more. There's not a whole lot different in how this looks. There are 4 different colors, as well as some online exclusive colors. And I'll have a link in the description if you guys want to check out those other colors and maybe pre-order and save some money. Those links down there can let you do that. Oh, and I should also mention that the 4 colors this comes with are all named titanium for pretty obvious reasons here. We have titanium black, titanium gray, which titanium gray might kind of be my favorite. I actually really like how this one looks. Titanium yellow. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of that, but you know, if you like yellow, there it is. And titanium violet, which I also absolutely love this color. And all of these, of course, are going to be $1,300. That's the starting price of the S24 Ultra, which is definitely more expensive than the 24 Plus and the 24 regular, which, by the way, I'm releasing videos about those at the exact same time as this one. So if you want to see those, definitely check out the link down below. But otherwise, like I said, really, really familiar design. The only real difference you're going to notice is on the outside. Of course, this is not glossy anymore. You have a much more matte appearance there. So that's kind of the biggest difference. But moving on to number 2, this is going to be with the cameras. The cameras have a really significant change. So starting off with what's similar, we still have a 12 megapixel front-facing camera, just like last year. 12 megapixel ultra-wide like last year, 200 megapixel wide-angle lens like last year, a 10 megapixel 3x optical lens like last year. But this is the big difference, and this is the one you're going to see in the headlines. You're going to see Samsung downgrades from 10x to 5x, but hear me out on this one. Last year, there was a 10x 10 megapixel lens on here, and this allowed you to zoom up to like 100x. It was really great, but now we have a 5x 50 megapixel sensor on there. So you're getting more megapixels, but less zoom. And if you crop in, of course, it's a 4x factor because it's squared there. So you end up with 12.5 megapixels at a 10x zoom. So technically, you have more megapixels at 10x. From my hands-on time with this, like, it still looked great. I didn't have them side by side, so I will be doing a side-by-side comparison on social media. Be sure to follow me at Mike O'Brien with 2 N's because regular Mike O'Brien was taken. Anyway, and also subscribe to the channel because I will have a full in-depth video about this once I have it for a couple more weeks and I can do a really intense camera test in different environments. But like I said, just in my time with this phone hands-on for about 2 hours, the camera really looked quite impressive no matter how much I zoomed in. Moving on to the third big difference with this phone, this is the baked-in AI. This is kind of Samsung's big pitch with this one. They're calling it AI for all, and essentially, they're baking, everyone always says AI everywhere, right? Like, it's really an annoying thing, honestly, at this point, but it's kind of nice. There's really 4 main things that they baked into this phone. So I don't mean to make a list within a list of this video, but the 4 big things that stood out to me with AI within this phone are all generally related to a little AI button that you see throughout the UI. But the first thing is circle to search. This was a really impressive feature, in my opinion, that I've used a lot in the past, but it took a while to do that. It was a big workaround. In the past, I had to use Google Lens, but now it's baked right into the phone, so you could either use the camera or you could use just your gallery on there, and any photo you want to learn a little bit more about. Maybe you want to identify a plant. Maybe you want to identify some type of food or an animal. Maybe you want to identify somebody's clothing. Like I've done this a lot in the past as well. If there's a jacket you really like, you can take a screenshot, you can circle it, and then you can search right on Google using this phone. Like it's really impressive that you can do that. So a little example that I did during my hands-on time was in the gallery, I just found a picture like this cat right here, and you can circle the cat. It'll identify the essentially what kind of cat it is and tell you a lot more about it. It gives you a couple options on what it thinks it could be. It's not always perfect, but I was quite impressed with the accuracy of the results right here. The second big AI thing, and this is where we really start to see that button I was talking about, the little AI button that shows up throughout this interface, throughout the UI here, this is chat enhancement. So if you are texting somebody and you want to text them in another language, you can do that just by typing out your normal text, tap on this little AI button, and translate to another language. Or another big one that I probably should use more that I don't use, and this would be changing your tone. So let's just say if I'm texting somebody and I use voice to text, which I personally do absolutely all the time, sometimes you tend to talk a little bit more casually than you would type. So if you just speak to this, you write out a whole paragraph, and then you're sending this to your boss. You want it to be a little bit more formal. You could tap on that, change tone, make it a little bit more formal, and it'll do that for you. Of course, you could also do like spell check and grammar, but that I think is something that is pretty useful. How much I'll use it, I'm not quite sure, but if I start using it, I think I'll start to really like that. Then we have translation. You can translate languages in calls, in text messages, like I just said, and in voice recordings, as well as other parts throughout this entire UI as well. But for example, if you're using a voice recorder, it'll transcribe an entire voice recording. It'll separate by who said what, so different speakers. You can add it to Samsung Notes, and you can really easily translate to other languages as well. And then the fourth thing is the AI summarizer. So within Samsung Notes, going back to that voice recording that like I just said, once it's in Samsung Notes, if you scroll down to the bottom, you can just tap and start, instead of typing, just tap on like right above the keyboard, the little AI button right there, and select AI summarizer. You can also like change formatting and do spell checking, stuff like that, but AI summarizer could take like a long 10-minute voice recording and just give you like a quick little summary once it's transcribed, which I think, again, pretty useful. And it's kind of nice that they're integrating all that so you don't have to copy and paste things over to ChatGPT and stuff like that. And now, before we get into the fourth main aspect of this phone that I think could make it a strong contender for the best phone of the year, let's talk a little bit more about the specs. There's like what's under the hood, what's running behind this phone. Of course, we are getting the next generation of processor on here, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 3, and now all models have 12 gigabytes of RAM instead of last year. I believe the lowest one was 8 gigabytes of RAM if you had 256 of storage, but now, like I said, these are all 12, and the storage goes from 256, 512, and up to 1 terabyte. Again, I think Samsung might, don't quote me on this, but depending on where you are, if you go through the link below, you should be able to get a free storage upgrade. So instead of 256, you start off at 512 for the same price as 256. But again, check out those links and see if Samsung's still running that, depending on the region you're actually in. Additionally, the battery is 5,000 milliamp hours once again. We're getting the same 45 watt fast charging, the same wireless charging 2.0, the same reverse wireless charging. I was hoping by now that the Qi equivalent of MagSafe would be coming to this, but unfortunately we don't have that just yet. This does have Wi-Fi 7, which is an upgrade from last year's 6E, but otherwise still IP68, still Bluetooth 5.3, a lot of the same stuff we're seeing. Kind of to summarize, like just a general upgrade over last year. It's kind of what we expected from this phone. But the fourth main difference, and this is probably one of the biggest ones for anybody who likes to use their phone for a while, especially for value retention of your phone as well. Instead of this phone having a life of like 3 or 4 years, this is now a 7-year phone. You're getting 7 years of security updates and 7 generations of OS updates, which means if you buy this phone today and you take care of it, like you put a case on it, this will last you until 2031. That's crazy. That's really hard to think about. But Again, it's so impressive that that's starting to become more of a norm. So that's the S24 Ultra, but honestly, it might not be the best phone Samsung just launched, not for everybody at least. They also launched the S24 and the S24 Plus, which for some people could absolutely be a better purchase. I'll have those videos coming out the same exact time as this video, so if you haven't already, be sure to click on, I'll put them like right here. Go and check out those videos, and of course, definitely subscribe to the channel so you don't miss my full video about this phone after I've used it for a couple weeks. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in those videos.